between China and the
Welcome back. A powerful cyclone made landfall in northern Mozambique Thursday evening, barely a month after a superstorm slammed into the country's center, leaving hundreds dead and causing devastation. Cyclone Kenneth hit the north coast of Mozambique in Cabo Delgado province after swiping the Comores. The UN warned of flash flooding and landslides. Some parts of the city are in darkness, and strong winds have felled trees and destroyed boats. Dozens of schools were closed and all flights between the capital Maputo. Kenneth, the strongest storm to make landfall in the area. Let's now turn to our continued coverage of the Libya conflict. And intensified fighting for control of the Libyan capital is turning residential areas of Tripoli into battlefields. This is according to the International Committee of the Red Cross. The humanitarian situation in and around Tripoli has deteriorated since Khalifa Haftar launched an offensive against forces loyal to the internationally recognized Government of National Accord. So far, the clashes have left at least 278 people dead and more than 1,300 others wounded, according to the World Health Organization.
We're against the dictatorship and the military regime. As Libyans, we want a state of law and institutions.
We are the victors on Ain Zara frontline and all other front lines, and the enemy will be defeated.
Well, still in Libya, where Sudanese migrants trapped in one refugee center say they want to be moved to a safer area. The battle for Tripoli has been raging for the third week now, and most of the refugees now feel threatened. Here is their story.
They left their homes in the troubled Darfur region in Sudan in search of peace. The peace that they found here at the Ahmad bin Chetwan school in Tripoli, where they're housed. Fighting between forces allied to the Eastern Commander, Khalifa Haftar, and those from the UN-backed government has been on for the third week now. But for these migrants, it appears like the peace they have now is elusive once again.
We came here because of the conflict back home. I came here with my 7 children. We were not able to feed or educate them.
Most of these women have lost their husbands. Some have watched their husbands being killed. In fact, one of us was forced to watch as her children were being murdered.
It could be a lull before storm as the fighting draws closer to their hideout. As thousands of families troop out of Tripoli to safer areas, the migrants are calling to be moved out of harm's way.
And everything is okay now. We are feeling some safety, and we hear the news from the other people as the calling. There is some shooting still now is continue, and we get the smile of life. There is available of the food and the water, and the children getting the playing, but we're calling more. The international organization help us.
It's 3 weeks since the start of clashes. More than 7,000 migrant families are currently stranded here.
Back home in Sudan, the wind of change is blowing. But for these refugees, it seems like they just walked into yet another storm. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
Meanwhile, thousands of illegal African immigrants and asylum seekers remain stranded in Yemen's southern port city of Aden. Local activists say the detained illegal African immigrants face harsh living conditions for lack of basic necessities. Yemeni security authorities have continued with a detention campaign which began about several days ago. About 4,700 illegal immigrants are currently holed up at a sports stadium in the neighborhood of Mansoura. Susan Wangeli reports.
It's been over a week now. The migrants remain stranded at this football stadium. They fled conflict and poverty back home. But here, they find themselves in the middle of another war. Many of them are in Yemen illegally and will be deported back home.
I came from Ethiopia to Djibouti, then from Djibouti to Yemen. Now the police are holding us. There's no food or drink, and there's no bathroom or showers. We're hungry. They're killing us with hunger. And I told them death is better than this.
Most of the migrants are from Ethiopia. This week alone, authorities detained more than 3,500 African migrants.
The humanitarian situation in the stadium is quite dire. So we're working with other partners in the UN and the NGO community to try and see how we can meet any critical needs to provide life-saving assistance. This is not a permanent solution. Whatever happens next, whether these migrants are brought somewhere else or they're given some type of other assistance, it must be done in a humane and dignified way.
Statistics show more than 36,000 African migrants arrived in Yemen during the first 3 months of 2019. Thousands of African illegal migrants looking for a better life are using Yemen as a transit point to their final destination, that being Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states. Susan Mongeli, CGTN.
For months, drought has ravaged Kenya with dire consequences on the populace. The cost of basic food items has risen sharply as traders report shortages, partly due to the drought. Families are now scraping by while trying to find cheaper options to put food on the table. Wilkister Yabwa reports.
In a little house in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, a couple holds a meeting to figure out how to make the family income stretch further. In recent months, drought has swept through parts of the Horn of Africa region. Food items have become scarce and expensive as traders report shortages, forcing this couple, like other city residents, to become creative.
Things like basic, as in you have to use in your daily meal preparations, like for example onions, tomatoes, potatoes, all that, it's really become expensive. So you can imagine most of the time we prefer to use tomato paste, which is not so healthy, but because we can't afford to get the tomatoes all the time.
Zara and Mate have 2 school-going children, and though they both work, they find the money they earn can no longer meet all their daily needs. So they are cutting out luxuries.
3 months ago I will take my kids out for like dinner. Right now I can't do that. I have to cook at home because things have gone up. Now we are doing plant protein. Instead of meat, you're eating beans. So just diversify the things you're eating and also just check on your budget.
They also find it cheaper to buy household goods in bulk to last them through the month, but it isn't enough. A recent rise in fuel prices in Kenya has led to a corresponding increase in the cost of other commodities. The cost of power and cooking fuel and transport costs are also making a dent in this couple's pockets. Theirs is the story of millions of Kenyans feeling the pinch as the drought bites. In Kenya's north, earlier in the year, millions faced starvation, and though the rainy season has begun, Kenyans don't expect to feel its impact immediately.
The people who are expecting to be planting right now, they're crying that there are floods, so you can't plant in floods.
And so across the country, families try to find cheaper options to make their food last longer until the situation stabilizes and the food prices come down again. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
All right, we have your business news coming your way. Here's a look at the headlines. South Africa's economy is feeling the pinch of inconsistent power supply. And we see how one electricity company is getting greener and providing more clean energy solutions for customers.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Kenya's economy expanded to 6.3% in 2018, helped by adequate rainfall, which spurred agriculture. The economy had slowed sharply to 4.9% in 2017 due to a drought and jitters over prolonged elections. According to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, the recovery and growth was driven by agriculture, which expanded by 6.6%, up from 1.8% in 2017. The World Bank trimmed its 2019 economic growth forecast for Kenya to 5.7% from an earlier forecast of 5.8% due to delays in the main rainy season. The government expects the economy to grow by 6.3% in 2019. And South African miner Anglo-American Platinum, or Amplats, saw its first quarter production fall 6% on back of operational challenges, problems at power supply, Eskom, and ore stockpiling. Amplats, which is the world's largest primary producer of platinum, produced 998,900 ounces for the quarter ended March 31st from just over 1 million ounces in the same period a year ago. The firm said that power cuts hit production at 2 of its mines. It lost a further 14,000 platinum ounces in February when Eskom implemented 5 straight days of power cuts. Amplats is now considering building a 100-megawatt solar power plant. And Nigerian Oil Minister Emmanuel Kachiku and the president of Saudi Aramco have discussed investment options. Although it is one of Africa's biggest crude oil producers, Nigeria currently imports the bulk of its petrol, with the nation's 4 refineries operating far below installed capacity for many years. Last month, its state oil company said it was in talks with different consortiums to revamp its refineries and save billions of dollars on fuel imports. Saudi Aramco is currently expanding its downstream operations, including refining and petrochemicals production, and it sees Nigeria as a gateway to other African countries. Substantive transformation in South Africa's fishing industry remains a challenge and requires a collective responsibility. The country's Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries Ministry has presented its 2020 draft general policy. It comes as the country seeks to transform as well as strike a fair balance amongst those involved in the sector. CGTN's Travers Andrews reports.
South Africa has a coastline of 3,000 kilometers with more than 22 commercial fisheries, as well as a number of non-commercial and small-scale subsistence fisheries. And all of them have come to argue the cases to the Fisheries Department for their 2020 rights allocations, which will allow them to legally fish for the country's living marine resources. This process will determine not only who gets what and in which sector, but just how much and for how long, which is a process where much has to be determined.
We're about to embark on a new rights allocation process in 12 fishing sectors, and we are reviewing the policy that guides that rights allocation process, and we're consulting with stakeholders around their views on how we can improve the rights allocation process to get that balancing act correct.
The fishing sector is varied, but is dominated by a few lucrative longline deep-sea fisheries, which largely fall to commercial interests, who export around $500 million to the overseas market, or half of its catch. The other half goes to the local market, with 144,000 tons of hake being caught in the Western Cape alone. Securing a decent quota has become critical to the local industry.
This is our second round of long-term rights that we're going through now, and we envisage that this next period will grow extensively, both in our fleet, our capacity, and our product supply in the world.
High-value species such as West Coast rock lobster is a fishery that's already 98% overfished, and for 2020, some in the small-scale fishing sector plan to diversify their interests.
we're trying to increase our current quota that we have. So just to be less reliant on the lobster sector, and basically to make sure that sector can grow, and then basically diversify back to lobster again. So our strategy at the moment is to focus more on longline and basically to make it as efficient as possible.
Of course, one of the most important issues of distributing quotas in a fair and equitable manner is also job creation. And with 27,000 people employed in the commercial sector alone, it will be an important issue that the Department of Fisheries will have to consider for 2020. The department says they'll likely take a similar path to previous rights allocations in order to avoid being hauled to court by disgruntled applicants, which could take unnecessary time and lengthen the already contentious process. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
And Ghana has launched the world's largest medical drone delivery service. The revolutionary new service will operate 24 hours a day from 4 distribution centers, each equipped with 30 drones. They will deliver to over 2,000 health facilities, serving 12 million people across the country. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai explains.
At the newly established Medical Drone Delivery Center in Omenako in eastern Ghana, blood is being packaged. The blood will be transported to a remote hospital.
Our focus as a government is to ensure that the health needs of the Ghanaian people are better served. In this 21st century, no Ghanaian deserves to die for lack of blood. No Ghanaian deserves to die because medicine needed is not readily available at the health facility he or she has been rushed to during an emergency.
The launch of the Medical Drone Technology Center in Ghana makes it the largest vaccine drone delivery in the world. The government says corporate institutions are funding the $12 million medical drone technology project. This drone technology service is expected to increase healthcare access to more than 14 million people in Ghana. At least 148 life-saving and essential medical supplies, including emergency blood, will be in stock at the distribution centers. And over 2,000 health facilities across Ghana are to benefit from the medical drone services.
We'll have 4 distribution centers here in Ghana. Each distribution center will have 30 drones, collectively capable of making 600 flights a day.
Ghana's Medical Association has, however, opposed this new technology. It says the money should instead be spent adding staff and ambulances to the country's healthcare sector. But the government says technology must be harnessed to change the face of healthcare delivery and save lives. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, Eastern Region, Ghana.
U.S. leading electricity provider NRG Energy is reassessing energy use by providing cleaner energy solutions for the customers. The company seeks to satisfy its customers' needs for renewable sources of electricity.
In the wake of renewable energy, consumers and businesses are reassessing their energy use. NRG is responding to this need by offering more choice to both businesses and residential customers by reducing emissions.
Climate change is the biggest challenge of this generation, and the decarbonization of our economy is a moral imperative. Renewables are becoming more affordable, and at NRG, we want to make it simpler and easier for our customers to access renewable energy.
The company continues to embrace megatrends impacting the power sector.
The power sector is actually entering into an inflection point. There are 3 main trends that I see in the power sector. The first one is the decarbonization of our economy, led by renewable energy. The second one is the Internet of Things, the digitization of everything. And then finally, consumers want something specific for them, the customization of products and services.
As most companies look to cut their carbon footprints, NRG boosts for reducing its own carbon emissions by 37% since 2014.
As businesses look to move to renewable power, their primary concerns are the complexity of how you get a deal done and price. At NRG, we figured out a way to make it less complex and much easier to transact for a customer. And secondly, technology has gotten things to the place where Solar and other renewables are much more economic in comparison to the grid.
Technology is making solar and other renewables a better deal compared to the grid, allowing companies to make the much-needed switch. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
You are watching Africa Live on CGTN. We have a lot more remarkable and amazing stories coming your way, including a young woman takes on malaria in Uganda with homemade soap.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes. The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. More than 200 million people contract malaria each year, 400,000 of whom die from the disease every year. Efforts are ongoing to stop the spread of the disease. In Uganda, a businesswoman has found a way to curb the spread through a soap blended with different kinds of citronella plants that help repel mosquitoes and hopefully keep malaria away.
8-year-old Ivoni takes care of her 7 grandchildren. For an area that is prone to mosquitoes, Ivoni had to make regular visits to the hospital for malaria checkups. 8 months ago, all this changed thanks to a soap that repels the parasite.
Before we started using the soap, we would constantly get malaria. But once we started using it, the cases decreased and it chased away malaria. We no longer fall sick easily.
Joanna Lubega is behind this initiative. She had several episodes of malaria infection as a child. This experience prompted her to make it her life mission to fight the disease. She focused on producing a repellent that could easily be used in everyday life.
Use our soap like a normal soap, like a normal regular soap you use for bathing, and we advise not to use strong scented perfumes and lotions, and then our soap will be more effective from 5 to 6 hours.
Joan established her company in 2016 and currently employs 27 people. She also wants to help low-income families that often cannot afford expensive mosquito repellents and nets. Currently, around 200 families receive the soap at a discounted rate.
We sell the soap to the high-income earners, the resorts and hotels at a high price, and then we can cross-finance the sales for the low-income earners in rural communities, and they can access our soap at the normal price as they buy a regular soap.
Soap may be an everyday item, but Joanne is showing that in the right hands, it could help cut the 400,000 deaths caused by malaria in Africa. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
The photo of 2 mountain gorillas in a selfie at the Virunga National Park went viral with over 20,000 shares on Facebook. The ranger who snapped the precious shot with the caption, "Just another day at the office," has been speaking out about the nature of the incredible primates in the protected reserve. Let's take a look.
Ndakazi and Deze gave their best the moment the camera came on. The outcome was fascinating and the world responded, widely sharing the photo.
I was guiding them when we were walking. We let them loose, so they were at ease. They were curious about what was happening, so they stood up. And when they stood up, I took my phone because I did not want to lose the shot because it was exceptional. I saw them assessing the situation, and what I liked is that the gorillas are very precious to us and they obey our orders. When they saw me take out my phone, they dropped whatever they were doing, spotted the camera, and watched. This is why the gorillas gave us such a good picture that went around all over the world.
But this magical moment just adds to their magnificence as special creatures in the wild.
These animals always surprise us whether they are in their natural environment or here at the Senkwenkwe Center. Even in their natural environment, they do it. You see, they can walk 1 or 2 meters on 2 legs, but also these animals are used to humans. They like to imitate and do what people do. This is why people who don't live with them can't understand, but they're incredible to the world. These animals tend to imitate human behavior.
Science gave us the confirmation they share 98% of our DNA, and that gives the gorilla a special capacity of adaptation.
We live with these gorillas. We know them. We take their pictures. We are always together. We feed them. We walk them. We accompany them in their natural environment. We are in charge of their security. This is why these gorillas are used to us. They are guardians and no one else. No journalist or visitor would take this photo.
The Virunga National Park stretches along the northeastern region of the country and is home to 22 primate species, including 3 great apes. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Remarkable story indeed. Moving on, Nigeria lags behind globally in having a vibrant reading culture despite producing several internationally acclaimed authors like Wole Soyinka and Chinua Achebe. CGTN's Philly Haza has more from Abuja.
This is one of the few renowned libraries in the Nigerian capital, Abuja. It has space to accommodate more than 50 readers at a time, but barely 20 people come here to read on an average day. Jeremiah is one of those book lovers who visits regularly. He says despite the prevalence of the internet, access to a physical collection still has its advantages.
I use the library these days because, number one, the serenity I obtain here, and number two, I have access to some information that that are scrambled. If I want to get them online, perhaps I have to pay or subscribe. But in the library here, I can have access to them for free, and also some archival informations that are very old that you might not find the digital copy online can be accessed in the library.
Nigeria is currently rated by the World Culture Score Index as one of the world's worst countries in terms of its reading culture, especially when it comes to reading traditional books. And with the advent of the internet, the conventional method of reading or accessing information in libraries is gradually fading away. Salamatu Sule is an author and book reviewer. She says this trend is as a result of various online platforms that tend to distract many young people.
Whether we like it or not, institutions are also supposed to have created digital platforms. So therefore, they are supposed to have solutions such like providing mechanism to restrain an average reader from so many social media handles, so thereby restricting them to some of these critical books that you're supposed to be reading.
The internet, though, has helped some readers who no longer have to own a physical book to acquire content anymore. Still, Sule believes institutions like schools and colleges could do more to help develop reading culture in Nigeria, such as limiting social media access.
There are so much factors that, take most readers away from reading their books. Critical books that are information savvy and culturally, engaging. Rather, it's the other way around, to go to chat and engage themselves in other social media.
In order to help sustain the reading culture in Nigeria, libraries like this are now reworking the environment to better serve online readers. Experts say it is important to take advantage of the digital era to inculcate the culture of reading early enough in people in order to transform them into better informed, empowered and productive citizens of the country. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
We've got your sports news coming up after the break. Here's a sneak peek at the headline. Caster Semenya strikes 5,000 meters gold at the South Africa National Athletics Championship.
Africa, where champions are made, records